Hi everyone, my name is Tochoko and welcome to another episode of Growthclinicc podcast. On the show today, we have Jack Page, who helps men improve their relationships with women. Jack and I discuss the line between positive and toxic masculinity, feminization of men, how men can reclaim their masculinity, patriarchy and its benefits of starting a family, how to keep your family unit strong, and how to succeed with women. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. How are you doing, Jack?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm doing well. I'm enjoying life and just getting through things. And had a son recently, so I just got my little baby son and taking care of him with my wife. It's good. Life's good.
How's that? How's being your father? Is that your first one?
Yeah, my first kid. Yeah, it's good. It comes with its challenges. It's been some tough parts, been some fun parts, but it's good. It's a big change, it's a big change, but change is good. So
I can imagine. So how was your Christmas?
Yeah, it was good. My parents came out here. I live in Thailand to be with my wife and my son, so that was good. It's the first time I've spent Christmas with my family in about 5 or 6 years.
Ooh.
So that was fun. It was a fun time. Made a big difference for the festive season.
It was nice. So to business, you're in the masculinity space on Twitter. So how did that? How did that happen? What inspired it?
Well, a couple of years ago, I basically felt I had something to share. So in our scene, there is, in the past, when I first started joining, the red pill was a bit more powerful than it is today. Certain prevailing narratives were kind of the main driving force of our scene, which I thought were not too healthy. There's a lot of good stuff to them, but there was some parts that were not so healthy. Yeah. And I thought I had something to add, which would provide a bit of a different take on masculinity, sex, women, things like that at the time. And there has been a shift, luckily, I think, in the past couple of years in that line. It's not quite as hardcore as it used to be, which I think is generally positive. While it still definitely has that underlying edge to it, which is good, but there's been a big change, and it's something that I don't know how influential I've been in that, probably not very, but there's definitely been a shift, which has been good to witness in real time, as it were, including people themselves, have not just the new people coming up and what's more common, but also the people themselves who were previously in the space have begun to see the light, as it were.
What was it like in the early days? Because from your profile, I see that you started your profile in March 2018. So that was the early season you're talking about, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going a lot longer than that. I'm still pretty late adopter compared to some of the other more established figures. But yeah, it was the language around women and sex and relationships in particular, I think, was a lot more negative. It was a lot more controlling. It was a lot more focused on kind of dominance hierarchies and sexual marketplace value, which are both things that are real and both do have some value and some weight when it comes to relationships. But it was way overemphasized, and there wasn't enough nuance applied to it. And there's a lot of people, and I've dealt with this with my clients, who ended up kind of ruining relationships or adopting kind of a more adversarial frame, and it ended up destroying their relationships. And I was worried, and I could see this would happen to other people if there wasn't some kind of change, and the good that is contained within our masculinity sphere could be tarnished by that negative. So it's changed a lot in that regards. Like, certain figures who were almost gospel at the time are not considered gospel anymore. So that's pretty good. There's definitely been a shift in the past, if I started in March 2018, that's nearly 4 years ago. Wow. Yeah.
So I'm glad you joined the space for good reasons, because most people, or the kind of tweets I see from people, the PUAs,
pickup artist.
Yeah. So the PUAs I see, they sound like they started it because just to try to get back at their ex-girlfriends because they were hurt by their ex-girlfriend or something, or they were heartbroken. So it feels like that is where they are coming from. Like, they're coming from a place of hate, not to actually help people. And it's actually very I don't like to use this word, toxic. So
Yeah, I agree. In general, that tends to be where it comes from, bitterness. And if you go into the real red pill kind of pickup artist way of looking at things, and there is the kind of red pill, blue pill kind of dichotomy, there is an element of truth to that, where guys will go in with the kind of modern way of looking at relationships, a soft kind of simpish behavior, and they get chewed up by women. They get hurt by the culture, and that's real, and that happens to people. And then they respond to that. But the problem is they respond to that and they go too hardline. Now that's okay if that becomes part of a process, right? Where you realize, okay, I've got to improve this aspect of my behavior, and you go a bit too far, come in a bit too strong, a bit too hardcore, a bit too dominant, a bit too wanting to kind of dictate and just have complete control. But then it has to be a process whereby you kind of realize you kind of flesh out those masculine, there's strength aspects of masculinity, and then you should develop a more kind of paternal instinct, or patriarchal instinct. But some people never get to that point, which is where the problem lies, I think.
Where do you draw the line between positive masculinity and toxic masculinity?
In these terms, it is, some of it comes down to intention and some of it comes down to framing, right? So the intention behind your actions, like when you are taking a decision, so men have to be leaders of the home, right? And that's part of being masculinity. The man is the leader. We bear the responsibility of what goes on inside the home. Mm-hmm. And part of that leadership, part of that responsibility means being able to, take decisions. Now, the reasoning behind taking those decisions matters. For example, just use the example of saying no to your girlfriend, no to your wife, whoever it might be. There are situations where you, as a man, have to say, no, you can't do that. Now, if the reasoning behind that is because you want to improve your girlfriend, you want to say, okay, this I think is, not healthy because of X, Y, Z, and you have some reasoning behind it that makes sense, or is it because you just want to control her, right? You just don't want her doing something because it makes you feel insecure, right? So that framing behind why you are doing it is really kind of the key. Is it from, as we mentioned earlier, like bitterness? Is it from insecurity, or does it come from a place of paternalistic goodness where you're trying to guide them into a better future? So it really does matter about intention. What's the reason behind doing it? What's the reason for doing this? And sometimes as well, people can believe they're doing it for the right reason and it's not, but that's probably a different topic.
So I feel like most people just fake all of these things because they might be soft on the inside and they try to act all tough and masculine, but it just boils down to how authentic you are, in my opinion. So
yeah, I'd agree. It's a big part of it.
What do you think is responsible for the fall of men in the West? Because I feel like the more time passes, the softer people are getting, and looking at it is just very sad because people are becoming soft basically. So what do you think is responsible for that?
Well, like anything, these things are multivariate. It's not like I can't isolate one thing, right, and say this is why. But a big problem definitely is the drop in testosterone levels. It's also the influence of some kind of some both cultural trends and technological shifts as well. Mm-hmm. So things like, for example, contraceptives and the widespread availability of contraceptives. Women who are on contraceptives tend to be more attracted to men who are more effeminate. And there's some element of sexual selection going on there because essentially it mimics them being in, it mimics pregnancy. That's what contraception does. It makes the woman feel like she's pregnant. So when a woman is pregnant, she's more attracted to more soft aspect of masculinity because she wants someone who's going to be caring and comforting in that situation. Now, a lot of people see that as that on its own, by the way, the comfort aspect of a relationship is negative. It's not. Like the whole alpha beta thing is a false dichotomy. It's not one or the other. All of us exhibit traits of both comfort and desire, and we have to within a relationship. And but that kind of sexual selection pressure does lead men to be more effeminate to get women. Then you have the problems with culture and kind of nudge behavior. So nudge theory of behavioral shifting, where you can create small prompts that gradually nudge people to behave in a certain way. And I think that's something that's probably been underappreciated and underdeveloped. And then there is just biological reasons, health in general. The decline in testosterone rates caused by, again, contraceptives. They get leaked into the water supply, and men are drinking estrogen. And obviously that's going to make them, when women urinate when they are taking contraceptives, a certain amount of that passes into the water supply, and it doesn't get filtered out when water gets purified. So there is still trace elements of estrogen within like tap water and stuff like that. So if you're drinking tap water, you're probably, and also when you're showering, it still gets contained through your skin. And then obviously other xenoestrogens, which are all around us, whether it's in the food you eat, whether it's in the things that your house is built out of, whether it's the clothes you wear, the showering, the products you shower in. All these things contain xenoestrogens, which are going to affect your testosterone production. So if you actually look at male testosterone levels in the West, they have been dropping year on year for decades now. I can't remember the exact statistics off the top of my head, but it's even got to the point where what is considered a healthy testosterone level in men has changed several times over the past few decades. As average levels declined, the mean average of people's testosterone levels has declined. So what's considered healthy has shrunk in relation to that. Where in reality, if you'd have gone back 50, 60 years ago, the healthy testosterone level would have been considered a lot higher. And then there's obviously other lifestyle factors, like people don't work out, people eat crap. There's 100 different factors there. The sexual revolution is a big part to play, I think, as well.
We explain that.
So the sexual revolution in the 1960s was a cultural revolution which reshaped everything within our society. Because everything is downstream of sexual relations between men and women. It's one of the reasons I do what I do, and I like to, help people improve their relationships, is because I believe by doing that, you're actually gonna have a real tangible impact on society. I can't really have that much impact on culture, but I can have an impact on individuals' lives and improve them. And by doing that, have some effect on culture. I don't think I'm going to save the world or anything, but at least I can have some impact. And the sexual revolution and feminism that came with that completely reshaped the way that the home was run, essentially, once women were put into the workforce and no longer considered it a good thing to do to stay at home, raise kids, take care of the house, and therefore provide time for the husband as well to go out and work, and also time for things like healthier eating, for example. I actually think one of the reasons people eat so badly today in the West is a result of women being in the workplace. Historically, you'd have had someone at home who'd be cooking 3 meals a day for the whole family, right? And now we don't have that, so we subsist on convenience meals. So there's a lot of downstream consequences of that, but it's also just a general adversarial framing. So we now live in a world where men and women are considered not to be collaborative, but to be at odds with each other. The whole premise of equality considers that there is some level of competition. You cannot be equal if you're not in competition with each other, basically. So the whole framing of equality is a framing of competition between the sexes, or to try and eradicate it. But the fact that you eradicate it means it must exist, right? Whereas I'm not sure that is really true. I don't think it is I don't think real, healthy, traditional relationships are competitive. They should be collaborative, and each has their own separate roles, but they are not pitted against each other. And that has had real bad effects because, especially in our society, which takes the women's side on these things and pushes against men, it's meant that men don't feel safe and don't feel comfortable in being assertive and being expressive within the home, because the cultural surroundings, which is all downstream of the sexual revolution and the third wave feminism that came along with it, two are kind of interchangeable. Women wouldn't be able to do any of this without contraceptives, by the way, because they would be getting pregnant, and they wouldn't sacrifice having sex, essentially, because that's such a primal biological driver. So that's a long-winded way of saying that, you know, a lot of things have affected it and a lot of things have made men softer today. It's cultural pressures, it's biological pressures, it's multivariate, it's a complex thing, which is why it's hard to talk about today. There's no simple answer, unfortunately, and hard to fix as well.
Yeah, I was about to ask you the solution, but you already said, well, what do you think? Let's try to what do you think the solution is to make men more masculine and high quality?
So there's a couple of different things that I think have to be done, essentially. Mm-hmm. So on one level, it is an individual thing. Each individual has to take responsibility for their health and for their position in life. But I do think it has to be coupled with a political element. I do think there needs to be at some point, and it is definitely taking place in certain sectors of our scene. Some of the people who were the originators are very highly influential in American politics now. People such as Mike Cernovich. And I do think there needs to be a political response where it is a retaking of culture with political solutions and a changing of certain legislative things. But it's also got to be people just taking control of themselves. And one of the best ways really is to start a family, because the family is the one real place where the state and the culture can't have full control, right? Within your family, you can, to some degree, protect your children from external influences, not, entirely. You're always going to be influenced by culture to some degree. Mm-hmm. But you are going to be in a position where you are going to be able to raise your kids with the values you want them to. Now, the key to that is you need to have a good relationship with a good woman, which is why this is why I do what I do. One of the many reasons I like to coach people in their relationships and coach men to have better relationships, because that gives them the foundation on which they can have a family. And then it's, kind of bound together with like-minded families, whether it's disparate networks like on Twitter or it's in person, and create a kind of groundswell and a political will behind it. And I do think there is an element of that that's taking place in the West. I don't know how influential it'll be. And I think we definitely need some of more powerful media outlets, because you have to be able to propagate the message and create the right narrative that means it's going to spread and not be destroyed by very well-funded and well integrated narratives that people just implicitly understand, which go against masculinity and go against masculine principles. Feminist narratives, if you speak a feminist narrative, most people are just going to agree with their mouth because they've been told it so many times, right? So we need narratives that can combat that have been propagated and argued in the right way and pushed forward by a successful media. So it's a threefold thing. It's a political solution, it's a cultural solution, and it's also an individual solution. And on our level, all we can really do is take care of ourselves and create a family and, create the means for that to happen. It's going to take a great man or a very successful man to really push forward a real great political thinker or a political leader or a great polemicist to really push forward the more media aspect and the political aspects, which is, these men are few and far between. So they do exist.
From the ground level, which is the individual level, you said starting a family. So what do you think it takes for a man to start a family? And at what age should he start it? Like, what's the ideal age? Because there's no general answer to this. What is your ideal age to start a family, and what does it take to start a family?
So I wouldn't really say an age. It's more of a point in life and a maturity that comes with it. Different people will reach that stage at different ages. I am someone who in general is more for men marrying earlier and having a family earlier. Like, I'm pretty young and I've got a kid, and that's been part of my own personal decision, but I wouldn't, force it on people. But I would say the prevailing narrative is to wait till your 30s and then you're going to get like the highest value woman. I don't think that's necessarily true. Even I think for certain people it's true, but I think in general, younger is better than older. You have more energy to to spend with your kids. They're going to see you with more vitality, which is going to be better for them as well. But you have to be ready for it, right? And you do have to be mature enough to be a father. And that is really important. And that will come, at different stages for different people. So I can't say there's a general, like, this is the best age.
That makes sense. So in one of your tweets, you said relationships fail when men keep their women.
When women don't, if they fail when men don't keep their women falling in love with them, words to that effect, right?
Yeah. So relationships fail when men don't keep their women fall in love with them every day? So can you explain this?
Yeah. So as is kind of aware in many people aware of in our scene, like, women are to a degree quite fickle in general. I think it's overblown a little bit, but a woman, once you marry a woman, once you're in a relationship with a woman, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Her love, it has to continue to be earned, right? It's not, there's a specific word, but it's escaping me. It's quite late here. It's a word. Yeah, her love has to be continued to earn. She's not just going to give it you and then that's it, you've got it forever, right? The only love that's like that is really the love between a parent and a child, I think. Otherwise, you have to keep earning it and you have to keep proving it to her day after day. A lot of guys get into a relationship and they get complacent. They think, okay, I've done it. I've got married. I've been with this woman for 5 years. It's like, just carry on, like, just go through these things very simply without putting the same effort in that I used to in the beginning. And she will, over that time, begin to feel unloved. She will, through his actions will demonstrate to her that he no longer values her. So if that carries on, she's going to eventually feel unappreciated, unloved, and the relationship is dead. At that point in today's climate, especially, that will lead to divorce. Now, there's an argument that divorce should be harder to get in to have, which I do agree with, actually. I do think it shouldn't. I don't necessarily believe in no-fault divorce laws. But at the same time, that was often used as an excuse for men not having great relationships and not being good husbands. And that's why no-fault divorce laws came into action, is because men weren't being good husbands. So really, you have to have the right relationship model that means that she is going to consistently feel your love. She's going to feel special to you. And why wouldn't she? You have chosen this woman to spend the rest of your life with. You're basically saying to the world, by marrying someone, this person is very special. You need to make her feel like that, right? Like, otherwise, why did you marry her? So, yeah, it's a consistent process. I think I said something in that very tweet, like, love is not it's not an action, it's a process. It's not, you don't just do it once and it's done. You're not in love and then that's it. You're in love forever. No, it's something that has to be continually worked at and continually built on. And that's when you get the most deep bonds.
Because this is how you keep your mind longer and not keep jumping from one relationship to another. Because
and it's the same with us.
It goes both ways, actually. Two people need to keep showing each other the love them. Just like how you have to keep working out every day to maintain your muscle. So another article, I read a lot of your work on the internet. I was like, whoa. You said the title was Why We Need Male Guardianship. So my question from that article is, how does patriarchy help? Like, why is men leading women important? Like, you talked about the cultural aspect of it, like how it was in the early times, like how cultures are formed through trial and error. And so how do you think, explain to my listeners how men leading women is beneficial to the society and the home?
So in general, the general principle behind the patriarchy being good for women comes from biology, right? So today, many people want to kind of deny biological differences between men and women. For example, the transgender movement and, stuff that's going on there, and just women, feminist movement in general. I think most people understand that there are biological differences between men and women, but they are underplayed and I think sometimes forgotten about to a degree. So one of these biological differences is that men are much more physically strong than women. And that is why men can overpower women. That's why rape is a thing. That's why domestic violence is a thing, because men are physically more capable of overpowering women. And women cannot really protect themselves from a man who, without some kind of technology like guns, for example, but a woman cannot really protect herself from a man who wants to exploit her. She's physically not capable of doing that. And the patriarchy basically existed or was created over a series of time because while evil men do exist and evil men that want to exploit women do exist, most men are not evil. And most men want to protect women from exploitation. As their wives, their daughters, their sister. You don't want bad things to happen to these people because you love and you care about them. So essentially, men set up a system of protection to stop women getting exploited by unscrupulous actors. So good men protected women from bad men, essentially, because men are the only people that could physically protect women. And then other aspects came into play as well. Men are more rational. They have a better understanding of second and third order effects and the consequences of certain actions for things like promiscuity or like the sexual availability of a woman has a lot of second order consequences to her and to society. So patriarchy, men set up a system to try and limit that because that's what made for the stable foundation of all civilization, essentially. Because if you actually look at, for example, polygamous countries where you're able to have polygamy instead of monogamy, which is slightly different to promiscuity, but these are the most violent countries in the world as well. I think 19 of the 20 most violent countries in the world are polygamous, which kind of tells you the importance of sex being a foundational issue that has many different outcomes from the way that the cultural surroundings around sex. And sexual promiscuity is particularly correlated with mental health issues with women, substance abuse issues, and other bad individual responses. And then there's other cultural things that come out of promiscuity when you can't guarantee paternity, and that creates a feeling of tensions within society. And then if there's constant competition for women, that means men haven't got time to focus on really growing things and building things. They're more hyper focused on sexual competition as well, which is biologically driven. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors at play there, which led to patriarchal cultures being formed. And they are pretty universal as well, which is another thing. Whenever I see something which cross-culturally is practiced cross-culturally, it tends to tell me that that's something that is very important and has weight. And there's been no society, no culture in all history which celebrates promiscuity outside of modern day and some kind of paganistic Bronze Age kind of tribal settings, which didn't have the right structure to build true civilizations, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's funny because the feminist movement is pushing out patriarchy, and they're like making it look like patriarchy is bad when in actual sense is to protect them. And like you said, a negative of lack of patriarchy is substance abuse. And we can see this thing happening so much in the West and in the world in general. And it's like they call it freedom, but in truth, they are being like is like a bondage, like I don't know, man, but it's actually bad thinking about it and seeing how much society has derailed. They've broken that protection that patriarchy offers. So yeah, to round things up, what are some advice you have for people in their 20s to become better men and actually attract high quality women?
So in general practice of what's considered good practice in our scene, I would agree with things like get a job, try and earn as much as you can. It's important. It's not the only thing that matters, but it is important. It's just better for you in general. Work out. It's very important to look after your health. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you more attractive to women. It's going to make you have more balanced testosterone levels and be more decisive and be more masculine. But also, I would say it's really important to develop aspects of your character, whether that be through religion and religious pursuits, whether it will be through philosophy, whether it be through developing your mind and really thinking about the ethical consequences behind certain actions is really, really important. But on a day-to-day basis, it's the real most important thing for succeeding with women is to be able to connect with them emotionally and be able to be in touch with your own emotions, a point where you're able to use them to communicate well, and to make women feel connected to you. Now, that's something which comes harder to men in general, and is something which is not talked about enough in our scene on Twitter. That's something that's pretty much never talked about, but it's really, really incredibly important. There's no way that you can really succeed with women without being able to communicate with them and connect with them emotionally, and that requires developing your own emotional strength and your own emotional wisdom beyond just your physical strength. Because in general, you want to be a fully rounded man. You don't want to be a caricature or an archetype, caricature of this kind of man. You know, you want to be someone who has depth to him and has got his own character and his own way of living, his own view on things, which is something that comes with character above all.
So you spoke about generating emotional character. So how does a person, somewhere in their 20s, actually develop emotional intelligence or emotional character?
There's many different ways. Obviously, going and socializing with people and spending time really talking to people and communicating with them is very, very important. There are specific things that you can do to really develop it with women in particular, and specific things you can follow, which are all things I teach my clients to be able to connect emotionally with women in a way that means they will be drawn to you, and it's one of the ways that they will keep falling in love with you over time. But it's also just doing hard things. You know, there is a truth to that, where you're going to develop your character by putting yourself in challenging situations. There will be points in your life where you'll do certain things, or you'll go through a period, which can be 3 months, 6 months, where you have an experience which really is going to develop who you are, whether it be moving away from home and getting a job and living on your own for a while and figuring all that out and really pushing forward in your career, whether it's something like traveling for a period of time where you're on your own and you're just with you on the road and you're meeting people and having new experiences, whether it's, you know, joining the army, even something like that, where you're going to be going through a real character building experience. It's going to develop who you are. These are all just examples, right? You don't have to do any of these. You can do other things, right? But it's putting yourself in difficult situations where you have to sink or swim. And yeah, you'll find most people will swim when they're in that situation. Absolutely. Very few people will actually let themselves sink. So don't be afraid of it.
So Jack, it's been nice talking to you, and I'm really thankful to have you on my show. So where can people find you on the internet?
So I'm mainly found on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @thinkinpeach, all one word. So think, and then in as in a box, and then peach, like the fruit. I also have a website, which is the same, www.thinkinpeach.com. My newsletter is where you will now find most of my writings. So I don't really publish on my blog very often anymore, pretty much never. But I do write emails at least 3 times a week discussing these topics in a lot more detail. And yeah, I coach guys as well into getting into committed relationships with quality women, how to become the man who's going to attract them, and also the specific step-by-step process for meeting these kind of women and connecting with them and getting into relationships. So they're the places they can find me, and feel free to message me, have a chat with me. I'm pretty available as long as the question is not, you know, it's got to meet a modicum of thought to it.
All right, man. Thank you for coming to the show. Have a nice day, man.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming this far. My name is Tochko. Find me on Twitter at Growthclinicc. Growthclinicc with 2 C's at the end. Or check my website at tochkokoro.com.